Everyone's talking about Artemis 2 and how America is finally going back to the moon after 50 years. But here's what nobody's telling you. This isn't about exploration. This isn't about science, and it's definitely not about planting flags and taking selfies on the lunar surface. There are three real reasons NASA is spending $93 billion to get back to the moon. And when you understand what's actually happening, it changes everything. What's up, everyone? If you're new here, hit subscribe because we break down the space news that actually matters. Today, we're revealing why the moon race is back on. And trust me, the official NASA explanation of peaceful exploration and international cooperation, that's the PR version. The reality is way more strategic. Let's start with what triggered this whole thing. December 2020, China landed a probe on the moon, collected samples, and brought them back to Earth. That made China only the third nation ever to return lunar samples. But here's what made Washington panic. China didn't stop there. They announced plans for a permanent lunar research station at the moon's south pole by 2035. And they're not going alone. Russia signed on as a partner, so did several other nations. Suddenly, America realized they were about to lose the moon to China. And when I say lose the moon, I mean lose control of the most strategically valuable real estate in the solar system. Let me explain why that matters. The moon's south pole has something incredibly valuable: water ice, trapped in permanently shadowed craters that never see sunlight. Now, you might think, okay, water on the moon, that's cool for science, but it's way bigger than that. Water is the key to everything. You can split water into hydrogen and oxygen. Hydrogen and oxygen make rocket fuel. That means the moon becomes a gas station in space. Right now, every mission to Mars or beyond has to carry all its fuel from Earth. That's insanely expensive. Fuel is heavy. But if you can refuel at the moon, suddenly deep space missions become affordable. The moon becomes the gateway to the entire solar system. Whoever controls the water at the lunar south pole controls access to space. That's why China wants it, and that's why America can't let them have it. But there's another resource on the moon that's even more valuable: helium-3. It doesn't exist on Earth, but the moon is covered in it. Helium-3 is the holy grail of fusion energy. If we figure out fusion power, one shuttle load of helium-3 could power entire countries for years. We're talking about energy independence on a scale that makes oil obsolete. Trillions of dollars in economic value. And China knows this. They've openly stated that helium-3 mining is part of their long-term lunar strategy. They're not being subtle about it. So when NASA says we're going back to the moon for science and exploration, what they really mean is we can't let China control future energy. Now, here's the third reason, and this one's uncomfortable to talk about: military advantage. The moon is the ultimate high ground. Whoever has a permanent presence on the moon has line of sight to everything happening on Earth. Perfect surveillance, perfect communication relay. In a future conflict, moon-based infrastructure gives you options Earth-based systems simply can't match. The US military knows this. Chinese military knows this. That's why their lunar program is run by the People's Liberation Army, not a civilian space agency. The Outer Space Treaty says no weapons of mass destruction in space and no military bases on the moon. But research stations? Those are allowed. And the line between a scientific research station and a military installation gets real blurry, real fast. Dual-use infrastructure is the name of the game. So America is rushing back to the moon, because if they don't, China establishes the first permanent presence and sets the rules for everyone else. This is exactly what happened with Antarctica. First countries to establish bases got to influence the Antarctic Treaty and how the continent gets used. The moon is Antarctica 2.0. Except there's no treaty yet governing who gets to mine what and where. It's first come, first served. And here's what makes this urgent. China's timeline is aggressive. They're not messing around. Chang'e missions are launching like clockwork. They're testing lunar habitats, practicing sample returns, scouting landing sites. Every mission builds toward that permanent South Pole station. Meanwhile, Artemis has been delayed multiple times. Costs keep going up, the timeline keeps slipping, and China is not slowing down. That's why Artemis 2 is happening now, even though it's just a flyby. NASA needs to prove they can get crew to the moon safely before Artemis 3 lands. They can't afford another delay, can't afford to let China get there first. The pressure is immense. This is a new space race. But unlike the 1960s moon race, which was about pride and prestige, this one is about economics and strategic control. The country that dominates lunar infrastructure in the next 20 years will dominate space for the rest of the century. Stakes couldn't be higher. Now, NASA's official messaging focuses on inspiration, science, and international partnerships. And yes, those things are real parts of the mission, but they're not the driving force. The driving force is geopolitical competition with China for control of cislunar space and lunar resources. Think about it. If this was really about exploration and science, why the massive rush? Why $93 billion in the current budget climate? Because decision-makers in Washington see China's lunar program as a direct threat to American strategic interests. This is national security. And here's the thing. China sees it exactly the same way. They view American lunar plans as trying to block Chinese access to space resources. So both countries are locked in a competition neither can afford to lose, and the moon is the battlefield. The public story is cooperation and peaceful exploration. The behind-closed-doors reality is an intense race for position and advantage. Now, does this mean we're headed for conflict on the moon? Not necessarily, but it does mean the next decade will determine who writes the rules, who gets mining rights, who controls transportation infrastructure, who sets standards for lunar bases. These questions will shape the space economy, and right now it's looking like a two-way race between the US and China. Europe, Japan, and India are players, but not at the same level. So when you watch Artemis 2 launch and see those 4 astronauts heading to the moon, understand what you're really watching. You're watching the opening move in a competition that will define human activity in space for generations. The moon is the prize. Water, helium-3, strategic position, gateway to Mars and beyond. That's what this is really about. Not footprints and flags. If you found this eye-opening, drop a comment. Let me know what you think about the new moon race. Subscribe for more deep dives like this. And if you want to understand what happens after Artemis 2, check out the video linked in the description. Stay curious out there, because the next chapter of human space exploration is being written right now, and it's gonna be wild.